Hello, my name is Daniel Yuck. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. In today's video, I want to share with you how I go about lining with a round shader tattooing needle. By the end of this video, you'll have all the secrets, my logic, thought process, the approach that I take when it comes to lining with round shader tattooing needles. Should you have any questions at all, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below and I will do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring my bell as I will be bringing more videos like this for you all. I will leave my Amazon affiliate links and my other affiliate links for you in the description below so you can check out the gear that I'm using on my end. With that being said, let's dive right on into this. I want to start from the very top and talk about a more controversial topic about round shaders. Now, I'm fully aware that the word shader is in the name round shader. However, these rules can be broken. What I mean by that is we don't necessarily need to use a round shader tattooing needle, whether it's a smaller or larger configuration of a round shader. We can use them for lining as well. Just because the word shading is in the name doesn't mean that that's permanently applying to its applications. We can definitely line with round shader. First and foremost, we can definitely 110% line with round shaders. I have heard several artists say that they don't line with round shaders, that we should be using round liners. However, I feel like this is 110% subjective, to each their own. I in fact do line with round shaders and I personally prefer to line with round shaders over some round liners. It really depends on the design, it depends on the technical application, so there is a lot to be considered when choosing my needles. However, I am a tattoo artist that does personally love to line with round shaders. Some artists would even argue that round shaders tend to cause more damage to the skin when we line with them. I'm not here to kind of go back and forth and or disagree. However, to any degree really, it doesn't matter if I'm using a round shader or a round liner, even a mag, I'm going to be causing trauma to the skin regardless. So that's my approach and that's my logic behind it. While there may be some truth behind that statement, me personally, I feel like it really comes down to the technical application and how the artist is using the round shader, how they are applying the tattoo with the round shader, because we can get trauma damage to the skin with any needle configuration. So yes, we could definitely line with round shaders, doesn't matter if it's smaller or larger, as I've mentioned. That's one thing that I wanted to go over. Round shaders are typically used when we want a bolder needle size. So for example, let's say I take an 11 round shader and let's say I take an 11 round liner. Although they may even have the same diameter of needles and the same amount, the way that they are configured and grouped is completely different. Round liners tend to be more grouped tightly together, while round shaders tend to be a bit more spread apart, which is why round shaders naturally have a bolder line to them. Let's start stepping into the technical application process. Because round shaders are naturally bolder, because the groupings are more spread apart, the application is going to have to be accounted and adjusted for, which means the way that we would use, let's say, an 11 round liner is not the same way that we would want to use an 11 round shader. It's important to note that most artists like to use round shaders because they may be more forgiving when it comes to making mistakes with lines. Not only that, round shaders typically tend to have a naturally bolder look to them, which is what the artists go for. So with round shaders, we're either going to get nice, solid, clean, consistent lines, or we're going to get very inconsistent lines that don't heal well. I'm going to switch on over to a close-up angle so I can begin explaining the reasons behind this. I want to work a little bit on this view right here, and then we'll switch on over to another side view. Now, as I've mentioned, round shaders are either going to give us that nice, clean, bold line that we are looking for, or we're going to get really inconsistent lines. Allow me to explain a little bit about that here. And I am demonstrating with the Dragonhawk X8 tattoo machine on Reelskin. Spirit stencil paper for this stencil right here. I'll link this down for you in the description below so you can follow along with me. There are multiple factors that I am considering when I'm lining with round shaders. Now I'm going to list those off for you, but before, let me explain why we would get inconsistent lines. Now, one of the main reasons why we would get inconsistent lines is the angling of our application. So if I'm using a round shader and I'm angling my machine too much at an angle, then the needles are not going to be true to their line weight. I'm going to get different line weight fluctuations. On top of that, I'm going to get inconsistent line weights throughout the entire tattoo, which is what I don't want. So I can't really be pulling lines like this or in any awkward positions. For me personally, I like to angle my round shader around this area, kind of parallel to my canvas. And when I say parallel, I mean the round shader needle head parallel to my canvas, like so. So let's say if I'm going in and depositing the line at this sort of angle right here, the lines that hit first, the needles that hit first are going to be where there's the most saturation. Although all the needles may hit, the top needles up here are going to be where it's lighter, and then the bottom area that hit first is going to be darker. This is where the inconsistency can come in. I angle my needles this way for the simple reason is all the needles strike together and hit together. So when they hit together, I'm able to maintain the integrity of the needle line weight that I'm using. So you can see this way, all of the needles are hitting together, as opposed to this way. This bottom half down here strike first and the top strike. And on top of that, the bottom half go in deeper than the top part. So this is where the inconsistency happens. And this is the reason why angling is important. This is how I go about getting clean, consistent lines. Every application is different for every artist, so I'm only explaining the way that I'm going to go about this. The components that are working together to accomplish clean, consistent lines when lining with round shaders are the correct angle, as I mentioned right now, the correct hand speed to voltage, needle depth, and ink flow. These are the components that I am keeping in mind and aligning each and every time I choose to line with a round shader. Allow me to repeat those. When I line with a round shader, the components that I'm thinking about are the correct angle, the correct hand speed to voltage, the correct needle depth, and the correct ink flow. Here's the thing, if we don't have the correct angle, then our lines are definitely going to be inconsistent and not heal correctly. If we don't have the correct hand speed to voltage, then we're not going to get those clean, solid, saturated lines that we are going for. If our needle depth isn't correct, then our tattoo may not heal correctly and or look right when the client walks out the door. And if we don't have adequate ink flow, then we don't have the correct amount of ink to deposit to stay true to the line weight that we are using. So all of these components, again, have to be aligned, and I can't exhaust that. You're going to hear me talk about these more in this tutorial. Let's begin the application here. So I'm always going to want to make sure that I have an adequate amount of ink flow when I am using a round shader. So therefore I have to have an adequate amount of ink in my tube. I like to face my cartridge in my direction, or the direction that I'm working in, more towards leaning my way, as you see right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on my comfortability as well. The comfortability that I feel when I'm applying the line is going to be my stability. Excuse me there. If I'm not comfortable, then I'm not going to be able to apply the line correctly. So you always want to make sure that you're comfortable before we even commit or put the needle down or go close to the skin. Make sure that you're comfortable. Make sure that you're sitting right. Make sure that you're not going to wobble along the way. And when I'm going to begin applying these lines, of course, when we apply any line, doesn't matter with a round shader or a liner, you want to use your elbow and your shoulder and not your wrist to avoid wobbles. So those are the basics there. I just felt like I should go over those. The voltage you're going to want to fine tune to the setup that you're using. So when I'm pulling the correct angle, I want to make sure I identify my point A to B, which is going to be right here. I want to make sure that the direction that I'm going to create the line in, I'm comfortable with. And when I do, I want to make sure that my needle is angled. You can see at this angle, I'm creating the entire tip of the needle. This is the true line weight right here, as opposed to going in this way. If I'm at an angle like this, the side right here is going to be the only sides of the needles that are hitting, not all 11 right here that I am using. I'm sorry, 14, forgive me. I believe this is going to be the 14 round shader from GMK. Forgive me there. So you can see that if I'm using the side of the round shader, not all of them are going to be depositing the ink. That's going to cause for inconsistent lines. So I like to place my machine and needle like so and deposit the line. And then I'm going to repeat this throughout the entire process. I can go over here and do this one as well, should I choose to do so. Let my round shader catch before I continue. This right here, I'm running at around 6 to 7 volts. Again, voltage is going to vary from your setup, but that's what I'm using to apply these round shaders right here. I'm going to demonstrate bad angles and inadequate ink flow. So let me demonstrate bad angling here. So let's say I'm trying to complete this O, but I'm angled incorrectly. I'm going to get results that are very inconsistent. So you can see that only a part of the needle is hitting right here. and it's going to fluctuate throughout the entire O because as I'm moving, different parts of the needle is hitting. If I angle it this way, this is how I can get that clean, consistent line the same throughout the entire O right here. Allow me to demonstrate that. So I'm going to taper it back in over, and I'm going to continue. Make sure that I'm comfortable. I've identified the point A and B, and you can see that I'm parallel to my canvas, and I've matched my hand speed to my voltage. Taper out there, and you can see all I have to do now is taper back in and complete this line. Here's a good opportunity to demonstrate inadequate ink flow. So even if we're at the correct needle depth, you're going to notice that the lines can still be inconsistent if there's not adequate ink within the tube here. Now, although that one may look consistent, let's say if I continue on over here, you can see now we have different parts of the needle depositing ink and not the entire needle. So this right here is a good example of why adequate ink flow is important. You can see that only this side of the L had ink deposit, as opposed to this side right here, there's none. Keep in mind, if this was human skin, we would have already have done the trauma to the skin, which means we would have had to have doubled up. That's the main reason right there why adequate ink flow is important. We always want to make sure that we're considering that variable each and every pool. So just keep in mind, a quick refresher, it's the correct angle, the correct hand speed and voltage, the correct needle depth, and ink flow. Let's continue to apply this here. And we are using the GMK 14 round shader. Just to confirm, my affiliate links will be for you in the description below. So you can see that if I did apply this, that's not a true line to the needle that I am using. I don't really like that from my tattoos. I like for my tattoos to read accurately. So you can see right here, I've identified my point A. I am comfortable. Match my hand speed to my voltage. I made sure that I'm at the correct needle depth. I was at the correct angle, and I do have adequate ink flow. The same thing with this. I'm going to make sure that I'm comfortable. I've identified A to B. I have the correct angle. I'm going to match my hand speed and voltage. I'm going to hit the correct needle depth, and I have adequate ink flow. So this is the thought process and approach that I take throughout the entire tattoo here. Hand speed and voltage is matched. My needle depth is correct. Making for a clean, solid, consistent line. My ink flow was right. Everything aligned there along with my angle. And you can see that that looks a lot better than what it just previously did right now. I'm going to continue on over here, and we're going to repeat the same process. I want to make sure that I'm comfortable. I want to make sure that I've identified point A to B so I know where I'm going and I know how I'm going to apply that part. Correct angle, correct hand speed and voltage, correct needle depth, and correct ink flow. Correct angle, correct hand speed and voltage, correct needle depth. And you can see I do have adequate ink flow, which makes for clean lines with a round shader. Same thing over here. Make sure I'm comfortable, identified point A to B. Hand speed to voltage, correct angle, adequate ink flow. Great results. Let's do the D right here, and we'll switch on over to a different angle. And I'm going to repeat this throughout the process here, so that way by the end of the video it really gets seared in the brain and you get my logic and thought process. I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with wherever I'm applying the tattoo, even if it's at a different angle. Make sure you're comfortable. Make sure that you've identified A to B. You want to make sure that you have the correct angle, correct hand speed to voltage, the correct needle depth, and the adequate ink flow. Now you can see I'm doing it in a manner where I'm getting the true line weight of the 14 round shader. Because for this design, I'm really looking for that bold integrity. So it's important that it's applied correctly so that way that shines through when I'm done. Same thing, A to B. I feel like I have enough ink flow. You can see the round shader depositing there. I gave it enough time to do its thing, which is matching the hand speed and voltage, and you can see these are the results. Allow me to switch on over to a different angle so you can see this from a different view. Let's continue with the S here. I've identified my point A to B, and I'm going to make sure I'm comfortable, have the right angle, correct hand speed and voltage, along with the correct needle depth, along with adequate ink flow. Same thing, I can go from here to here, A to B. Identified A to B. I am comfortable. I have the correct hand speed and voltage, the correct needle depth, the correct angle, and the right amount of ink flow to make it all the way through this S in one single pass without having inconsistent lines. The entire line all the way through is clean and consistent. Now let's navigate on over to the C. If we don't have adequate hand speed and voltage, if our voltage is too high or too slow, then we're going to get adversity. So if our voltage is too high, we're going to cause more trauma to the skin and damage the skin. We could have potential issues with healing. It can heal with textures to the skin. A lot of bad can happen. Let's say if we're going too slow, then the ink may not deposit it in a clean and consistent manner to where we're getting clean, consistent results. So with the C, I'm going to identify A to B. Correct angle, align my hand speed and voltage, hit the correct needle depth, and make sure I have adequate ink flow. And as you can see, that this is a repetitive process over and over and over again. Correct angle. Now let's say if I was moving too fast, then my line is going to come out choppy and inconsistent. I know at first glance that may look good, however when I wipe away, keep in mind on human skin, when we wipe, the stencil does come off. This line right here is not going to look anything like this side of the C, is not going to look anything like this side right here. This right here is demonstrating poor hand speed and voltage. I moved way too fast for the needle to do anything correct right here in this area, which is resulting in an inconsistent line that looks faint and light and inconsistent. There's no saturation going on either. So you can kind of see that moving too slow would be the opposite of that, where we would tear up the skin, cause too much trauma and damage for one area. Also, moving too slow, we can deposit too much ink in one area that can result in a blowout, or over time, this letter specific that we took more time on would heal a lot bolder than the ones around it, which is also bad. So for example, moving too slow for this voltage is obviously like this. Although this is fake skin, we're not going to see the damage being done. However, this is far too slow for this voltage, and I can feel it chewing up the skin. This area right here looks naturally bolder than this area right here, and that's a result of moving too slow. Pushing too much ink into the skin could cause those sort of adversities. I'm just going to want to go ahead and continue. Match my hand speed and voltage correctly. Like so. You can see though, where I went too slow, the C is just a tad bit bolder than the surrounding areas. So let's do the H here, and then I'm going to bring you up to a different angle to show you the needle close up here. So repeat the process, make sure that I'm comfortable, identify the point A to B, make sure that I have the correct angle, make sure I match my hand speed to voltage along with the correct needle depth, adequate ink flow. A to B, A to B, A to B. So you can see, even just at very slight angles, I'm still getting clean, consistent lines here. So I don't even have to be straight parallel every time. I could just be with a slight angle and it'll still work the same. However, for the most part, I always stay parallel to my canvas. And the reason for that is because that's where the line weight comes in. If I'm this way, I'm only going to get half of the needles. Therefore, the line that I'm putting in is not going to be true to the line weight that I'm using. So I'm going to repeat the same process as well. Make sure I'm comfortable, identify my point A's to B's, have the correct angle, correct hand speed and voltage, the correct needle depth, and adequate ink flow. All of these have to work together to create that clean line that we're looking for. So the consistency and the cleanness comes from how comfortable I am. The confidence comes from identifying my A to B. I have the confidence and I know where I'm going, and that allows me to have a bit more confidence. The correct angle allows the line weight to shine through. The correct hand speed and voltage allows the saturation, and the correct needle depth allows the lines and the tattoo to heal consistently, and the ink flow allows everything to be nice and clean. That's how I look at this, so to speak, in a nutshell. So this is the angle, you can see. Like so. So here's another angle, and I want to try to really get these points across for you so that way you can leave this video here with solid information that you can use and apply immediately on your end. We're going to repeat the same thing with this O right here. Identify my point A to B. Make sure that you're comfortable. Make sure you have adequate ink flow, correct angle, hand speed and voltage, correct needle depth. Think about all of this before we commit to the line. And the same thing, so comfortable, identify A to B, make sure I have my angle, make sure I have my hand speed and voltage in mind, my needle depth along with my ink flow. So my ink flow is aligned, my needle depth is aligned, my hand speed and voltage is now aligned with the correct angle. And these are the results right here, real time. It really is about aligning these fundamental variables and components so that way we could achieve consistent, solid, saturated results. Let's do one more here. This is the last letter L. Identify my A and B. Make sure I'm comfortable. My angle is correct. Hand speed and voltage is correct. Correct needle depth in mind along with my ink flow. Everything is aligned. For me, what it feels like to pull clean lines every time with a round shader is, I'm not sure if you ever just had a day where you kind of say to yourself, today was a great day. how you felt that entire day. That's what it feels like to pull clean lines with a round shader. It's really satisfying. Identify point A, B, make sure I'm comfortable, correct angle, hand speed and voltage, think about the needle depth, make sure I have adequate ink flow. And I can't exhaust that enough. I'm sorry if I've said it too many times, and I hope it's seared into your brain by now. And I've completed this design right here. Here is a close-up look at the completed tattoo. You can see every line appears nice, clean, solid, and consistent. There are no blowouts as well. The only blowout that we have is where we went too deep on the C when I was demonstrating moving too slow. However, other than that, this right here is a cleanly applied tattoo. These fundamentals that I shared with you here in this video can be translated over to human skin, as this would be the exact same way that I do apply lines on face skin and human skin. That right there is how I go about lining with a round shader tattooing needle. It's important to note that the same rules that I shared with you here are the same rules that I'm going to be using for any size of round shader that I choose to use. Doesn't matter if it's a 111 round shader all the way down to a 14, 5 round shader, you get the idea. The same rule of thumb applies to every single needle round shader size. I do hope that you can find value and take something from this video here. Should you have any questions, I encourage you to drop a comment down below, and I will do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring my bell, as I will be bringing more videos like this for you all. I do also have social medias under the same name as my YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, all under Daniel Yuck. I would appreciate the support over there as well. With that being said, I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.